Welcome to Lock and Load Podcast. My name is Josh.
And I'm Michelle.
And we're here today to talk to you about Connecticut 2A issues. Today we have a special guest named Martin from Paravant Group.
Correct.
I said that right?
Yeah, you got it.
Martin, why don't you tell us about, or tell the viewers about yourself?
Sure.
A little background.
I'll go way back.
Not to when you were born.
No, we're not going to go that far. But I am an immigrant to this country, so I do take the Constitution very seriously. Came here about 85. Eventually got my citizenship. I am currently employed in law enforcement and have been for the last going on 16 years. A majority of that time was in what's called, we refer to as plain clothes. Most people consider undercover work. And a good portion of that was doing cases around gun trafficking, gang shootings. I was lucky enough to do a RICO case into a gang. I dealt with mostly violent individuals pretty much throughout my career, and I'm still a detective. I currently am assigned to major crimes, which we mostly deal with still shootings and homicides, just a little bit more concentrated. And I work for one of the big three cities in the state of Connecticut.
All right. So today's episode, we're going to focus kind of on the law enforcement and gun control aspect and how they kind of merge together alongside with like federal laws and that kind of stuff too, on the FFL aspect. So we have a series of questions that we kind of come up with before the podcast, and we'll ask those and we'll see how they go. So can you elaborate on your experience in law enforcement, how it shaped your perspective on the gun control issues and the impact on criminal activities? Also, I know you participated in the open hearings for HB 6667. So wherever you want to start on that.
Correct. Yeah, definitely. I did participate in the last judiciary, I think, committee hearing or whatever it was. I did testify via video. I didn't get to go to the Capitol. I was working that day. I kind of stated that these current laws are not going to affect crime. Like, we know that. No laws that we've passed so far have affected criminal activity because the laws are usually based around limiting tools rather than looking at the activity itself. Inanimate objects by themselves they cannot have action, right? They need an actor to do that. As I said in that committee, I think most of these laws only affect what we consider kind of the verbiage as law-abiding citizens. People that could own a gun legally, do so legally, go through the process no matter what state they're in owning that gun and carrying that gun in a responsible manner. The unfortunate part of it is those particular laws affect those people, right? But those people are not any significant number of crimes committed with guns.
Correct.
Yep.
So, it's not curbing criminal activity. And if it was, then we would see a decline in criminal activity. And you're going to have a lot of politicians and higher ups in law enforcement say, well, look at this current statistic, like crime is down. Sure, but show me how that law affected that.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the causation? Like you could claim whatever you want. Here's what we do know about crime, statistically speaking, is it ebbs and flows. Mm-hmm. Right. It's crime is more of a socioeconomic issue than it is anything else. So passing those particular laws, especially the ones currently, on the others, on the braces, it's for us in this state, it's not going to curb crime. It's not going to stop gun trafficking because the guns that we currently get in this state that are illegal don't come from this state.
They come from the South, don't
Correct. They? Yeah. So it was typically referred as like the iron pipeline.
So I have a question along those lines. So you hear a lot now in the media, and they're saying that anybody who's pushing for gun control, and what the new thing is that they're using that I've been hearing is all guns, are once law-abiding, are legal guns, and so they have to curb the legal guns in order to stop the illegal crime with illegal guns. And I never understood that concept. Does that make sense? Like, I understand why they think that, but is it really that? Well, are the numbers really there? Is the statistics really there that they'd have to start curbing legal guns?
Straw purchasers kill that statement right there.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or
so
the theft of a gun.
I've never heard of a straw purchase before. because you certainly aren't taught that in a pistol permit class. It's when you knowingly buy a gun for somebody who cannot possess a firearm.
Correct.
That's the simplest definition I can give you. And that is it's illegal federally.
Correct.
If you come into the store and you're like, hey, I'm buying this gun for my wife or whatever, significant other, and we hear that, we know that, sales denied because it's a straw purchase.
It's the same with ammo.
That doesn't stop anybody from going to the next store down the street and then buying the gun for themselves, quote unquote.
Yes, and not saying anything.
So yeah, absolutely correct, right? So straw purchasers or stolen guns, right? And even when we look at stolen guns, right, we have politicians push for like safe storage laws.
Yeah,
they're like, oh man, all these guns that are stolen that are later used. Well, yeah, because most straw purchasers report the gun stolen. So it's a skewed statistic.
Yeah.
Correct. It's a skewed statistic in itself.
I never thought about that, but you're right.
Correct.
And I didn't. That shouldn't be.
And I don't know. Yeah, exactly. And is that separated, right? Like after you find out that was possibly a straw purchase, or if they were never convicted, is that statistic now fixed to that being a straw purchase gun rather than a stolen gun? No, it probably isn't, right? I don't know what the answer is because every state does it differently, and the feds, I'm sure, have their own way to do it. But that in itself is a wrong statistic, right? We get hung up on these kinds of numbers, right?
Yeah.
But are they accurate for what you're trying to use them for?
Well, it's the same as gun violence numbers are skewed also.
I mean, that's any statistics in general.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
They can be skewed one way or another,
Correct.
and interpreted then in a different way or another.
Well, they can get whatever number they want depending on what the original model is they're going to use.
Yeah. So,
okay.
I'll kind of give you an example of, we'll take guns out of it, but we'll look at something else. I'm an instructor down at WAFT in Florida, and I recently...
is that how you pronounce that? I was always wondering.
Yeah, WAFT, yep. Western Orlando Firearms Training, WAFT.
Okay.
And I currently am an instructor there, and a couple weeks ago I was down there teaching a course, and the course was based around solving problems around vehicles. So one of the statistics I looked at is carjackings, right? Fox reported like million-something carjackings. When you start digging into the data, you realize like none of it is accurate. And 1 million is definitely not it, right? Because what Fox did is they took stolen cars and reported it as
carjackings.
Yeah, to kind of sensationalize. And I don't know how that happened. So I looked at yes, carjackings are up. Traditionally, they have gone down since 1978, and they took a really big hit prior to COVID, but that wasn't for any other reason than technology. Right. Cars became harder to take and easier to track.
Correct.
COVID hit, it changed that because the demographic that was doing the carjackings changed because carjackings in juveniles went up like 200%.
Yeah. I mean, where my car's parked right now, somebody has tried to steal that twice out of a gun store parking lot.
Correct.
Like,
yeah. So,
insane.
So, that statistic, if you want to sell something, you could use it a certain way or whatever. And sometimes you need to just be aware and be more informed. Mm-hmm. So no, I don't think that we have I looked it up. We have 40,000 overall gun laws on the books. How about we just use them?
Yes.
Or enforce them.
Yeah, actually enforce them, right? So any of your listeners or you yourselves can kind of, I did this morning just to take a look. In the state of Connecticut, one of the things is there's a mandatory minimum if you get caught with a gun as a felon.
Yeah.
But what most people don't know is that doesn't mean jail time.
Correct.
Yeah. How many of these are dropped too?
Well, whether they're dropped, but let's say the ones that are actually, right? So it's 5 years. Well, yes, but it's 6 months in jail, so many days parole, and then probation. So it's not actual 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So if you do something as simple as this, you could Google search, right? Any of the major cities and just Google recent, let's say homicide or shooting arrests. Take that person's name, go on the judicial case lookup website and put them in for prior convictions.
Mm-hmm.
It will tell you what they've been convicted of, when the crime was, and how much time they've gotten. And all of a sudden, you're going to realize that violent offenders
correct
don't really do time.
No.
So they continue to be violent offenders. In that HB 6667, one of the bills that was being proposed by the other side was harsher sentences on multiple gun offenders. And there were politicians that were wholly opposed to it. How can you be opposed to that? How can you be opposed to somebody that has multiple gun arrests, illegal gun arrests, right? They couldn't possess this firearm. I don't get that. If you continue to show the propensity for violence or carrying a firearm, And people say, oh, we need to be safe from guns, but then in turn say that people should not get additional time for doing the same act multiple times. To me, it's just not common sense.
So we'll take I'll use Waterbury because I believe it was that police chief who was there.
Yes.
Correct, yeah. I did see
why do police chiefs think this bill is going to help at all? So you're coming from like the I don't want to call it patrol, but like that aspect where you're interacting
I'm
with
not in
public.
the administration.
But like admin who's sitting behind a desk thinks this is going to help.
But Waterbury also said they also know who the offenders are of most of the crime in the city, and yet
they don't do anything.
Well, that's a two-part question. I'll answer both parts.
Okay.
And I'll answer your first part indirectly, but so in a way that you understand. I do a lot of teaching. I teach on gangs. One of the subjects I cover is sovereign citizens. Right?
Oh,
okay. So sovereign citizens only believe in the authority of law enforcement that are sheriffs. Do you know why?
No.
Because they're voted in by the people.
Okay.
Police administrations are appointed by who?
By your mayor or something.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So anytime you're given a position, this is just my opinion, right? You're given a position, you're going to kind of tote the line of that particular administration.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
You're still going to do the right thing, but in the end, the messaging still has to kind of align with whatever that particular administration.
The person who hired you.
Correct. I mean, and we're not talking about just police chiefs. We see that, in any kind of thing. And in no way I'm saying that police chiefs are politicians, but
that's an interesting perspective. Now, like, really think about it. Like, you got hired by this person, you were appointed by this person, whatever it may be, where a sheriff was elected by the people.
Yeah.
But Connecticut got rid of our
on our well, we don't have a county system, really, a true county system. We're one of the few states that doesn't. And it was when we did, it wasn't the same as when you get down south and where they have very strong county systems. They're their own kind of almost republics in a way, right?
Yeah.
But I think that somehow can become an issue in these types of conversations, right? I will say, for example, the department I worked for and work for currently, my chief was for the repeat gun offender bill. That's what he did. That's what he did speak about, because we're plagued by that, right? Like that's something that we deal with every day. So that's my answer to that. I'm sorry, your question was, because I did lose my focus, and I'm trying to remember, because it was a two-part question. I
can't remember.
No, you can't remember. It's man, it was a good
well,
one,
if it comes back, we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
We can't go back and replay the video.
No. Man, it was good. I should have wrote it down.
Sorry, I should have done that too.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
So from your professional vantage point, how do you assess the current state of gun control measures in deterring criminals from buying from obtaining firearms through illegal means? Is gun control? I mean, you kind of answered this already, but
no, I did. But I'm gonna add another layer to it, I guess. Okay, and go a little bit deeper. A lot of people are focused on the use of the firearm at its endpoint, right? At the crime. We also need to address the supply chain, right?
Yep.
So, correct. So let's address the straw purchaser.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's, I could tell you that most straw purchasers are people that are, they're taken advantage of, and they don't mean to, they're not thinking about, oh man, this is what I'm doing. This is what's going to happen with this firearm, whatever. They may have a substance abuse problem. They may be down on money, whatever that thing is. Right. So they're not thinking of that long-term consequence of what's going to happen. But then my question is, maybe people should look up whether straw purchasers ever get charged and actually do time.
Yeah.
Do you know the statistics?
Do you know?
Yeah, it doesn't happen that often.
No. Yeah.
I could tell you for the Judiciary Committee, and I wish I had the notes with me. I actually forgot, but I looked up the actual government did a study on NICS refusals.
Yeah. Okay. So when your background check is denied.
Correct. Yep. So there was like a 10-year study they did on this, and the numbers were like, let's say it was staggering. Let's say it was like 100,000 refusals. So many were proposed to the ATF to look at as like, hey, something is wrong here. out of like 100,000, like 1,200 were investigated or something like that. And then like even less were ever prosecuted.
So even though like straw purchase is illegal currently,
Correct.
And
it's very hard to prove though.
Oh.
It's very hard to prove because if you say your guns were stolen,
right,
I'd have to prove that they're not. And also with crime, there needs to be an intent, right? In a lot of these cases. So they're not easy to prove, right? They're really not.
So is that something that you end up proving if it happens time and time again and that keeps going back to that same person?
Yeah, I mean, you know, let's look at it this way, right? And I'll kind of speak from a little bit of experience. You go to somebody that's a straw purchaser and they admit to you, right? Usually this person is, once they're charged, whether they do time or not, they're not going to be able to repeat that process because now they're in the system.
Yeah.
They're convicted. Right. So most of the straw purchasers would take just a plea and you know, the plea is offered to them because they can't repeat the crime. Right. It's done.
Yeah.
Now, is it fair at the same time to take a mother of two that's down on her luck, that just was taken advantage of by somebody else, and then say, hey, go do 10 years? Like, is that going to fix this problem? Realistically, I'm going to tell you it's probably not. Okay. Right? It's not going to, like, because you're not going to know that. You're not going to turn around and be like, oh, remember that one mother and, you know, in Podunk, South Carolina, that purchased that land? I better not do this. Right. Realistically, yeah. I mean, let's just be honest. Yeah. You know, so the problem is it's multi-pronged.
Okay.
Right. And it's not just a law enforcement issue. It's not just a political issue. It's an issue of, let's start with socioeconomics, right? Like, why do people do something to begin with?
Yeah.
Right. It's no different than narcotics or anything else. Like, there's a demand, there will be a supply.
Yeah. Well, it goes along with crime in general.
Correct.
There's many, many different reasons why people do this. Some do it just to do it. Some do it because of hard times.
Correct.
Some do it because they're bamboozled and they don't understand what they're actually doing. So it's there is no one size fits all as far as consequences.
No, there's not. The issue with this whole issue, right, of like gun laws and crime, one of the biggest problems with this is that's so politicized that it's so separated that we can't get both sides of this issue to come together and come up with, you know, air quotes, common sense solutions, right?
You're using that word.
Yeah. And that's why I said air quotes, right? Common sense solutions, because they're not easy.
Right.
And I don't know if they're like, we're not just going to snap a finger no matter how many gun laws we pass and like, oh, let's go back. Let's talk about gun crime. What is, like, there's no gun crime. Guns can't commit crime.
Correct.
Right. So it's that alone. We're already misdiagnosing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. We're already at a problem. That's like me going with a gaping hole in my thigh. Right. And they're like, oh, you know, you have a pain problem.
Yeah.
No, I do have a pain problem, but it's because of this gaping hole here while I'm bleeding out.
It's the same as assault weapon. There's no such thing as an assault weapon. It's assault is a verb.
Sure. I mean, and you know, the issue is that one, I will say this honestly, and you know, if you get upset with me saying this, I'm probably talking about you. And I'm okay with that if you know me, especially.
Raise my hand.
But one of the issues I think here is too that one side is way better at marketing than the other.
Absolutely.
Yep. 100%.
Absolutely.
You know, one side and is just better at it.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. And what are we all really fighting for? Listen, you're never going to change my mind. Coming from a communist country, right, that was unarmed and occupied, that I should give up. Poland? Poland. Yeah, I came in the 80s, so it was still, we're talking about the wall, you know. Everything. Okay. So you know, my dad escaped as a political refugee. He was part of Solidarity. He was deported. He came back. So
another topic.
Yeah. So I do understand that, like, you're not going to change my mind, right? Like, I do believe in kind of like what we say is, I am my first responder, right? Mm-hmm. I am responsible for my safety and my family's safety, right? I don't believe that a law enforcement agency is. We as law enforcement are actually second responders to any critical incidents most of the time. So I am the first responder, right?
You're not there when it happens.
Correct. Most of the time, yeah. It's not probable. Mm-mm. So knowing that, you're never going to change my mind to give up a firearm. I also know that that person that is just ideologically set against firearms, I'm never going to change their mind to possess firearms.
Mm-hmm.
But those are not the people that I'm trying to inform or have conversations with. It's the moderates.
Yeah.
It's the middle ground. The middle ground is bigger than both the left and the right, or however you want to call them, right? The 2A or anti-2A, however you want to call the groups, it doesn't really matter to me. We're fighting for the middle ground.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen that a lot more in pistol permit classes.
Correct.
You get the pro 2A guys that are like, this is my right.
Yeah.
And then you get the moderates that are just like, crime's going up, and I just want something to protect my home.
Yes.
So now let me ask you this, right? So you own an FFL. We kind of work in the same field, and that's how we know each other. The side that gets hurt a lot, right? Our side and the people that speak out the most. Do we really look like when we dress or talk in the same way that the moderate middle does? Who identifies with, like I just watched Moms to Be in Action. When they put up a photo, it's like, you're like, wow, yeah, you can't, how are you going to fight this, right?
Yep.
We're doing, and I'm in the training space, right? So I understand. We're like our push for gun rights is like the guys that used to come to my classes, which, listen, I get it. Like, you could do that. I have a plate carrier, a helmet, but like that middle ground goes, man, I'm not that person.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? So it's very
tactical, Timmy.
Correct. So from a marketing standpoint of view, it's difficult because we have so much of that out there that people grasp at that. Yeah. They're like, oh, you want to be this guy? And there's nothing wrong with that guy. This is America. You could guys used to come to my class, and I remember in the beginning, and they're like, hey man, this is before, a lot of that stuff was cool. Can I wear this? I said, bro, you paid. You could wear a banana hammock and heels for all I care. Like,
that's a mental image.
Yeah, I can't get rid of that now.
No, what I'm saying is it didn't matter to me. But I'll tell you what, I was very fortunate. Obviously, you know Mary, and when me and Mary started, when we got in a relationship and we started working together, this is what I will tell you: average Joes show up to class like GI Joes. Okay, women show up exactly how they dress every day. Mm-hmm. It is such a different demographic to work with. So now, like, I had women show up in from work, professional business attire, heels, right? I've had women show up in just like, cut off jeans and just like a pair of boots. Like, they didn't do that, right? So for a market, like, I understand marketing and just overall the view of it, that's your moderates. We do the whole thing like, we're out there like open carrying sometimes an AR and like, yeah, come to our side. And most people are not going to. I can't tell you how many clients I have that are pro 2A, but they're like, dude, don't put me on social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so that is something like in my classes, a lot of these pistol permit guys, they always take pictures with the students, right? And and I'm not going to anybody specific here. There's a ton of people.
They do.
There's dozens. And like, did you actually like ask them?
Correct.
Or were you just like, hey, let's take a picture? And then they kind of feel like peer pressure. So like, I'll take a picture of my class. I take it from back here. So you see back of heads.
Correct.
Like, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you can show that you have a full class, but you're not.
You see nobody's face. You cannot, with the exception of the instructor or like if Deziel's talking during that point or something, like you don't know anyone else in there.
Yeah.
But I get that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I'm not, listen, I'm not, I own all that stuff, obviously for work and, on my own, like, I do go to classes that requires plate carriers and the whole. I get it, man. Like you could do that, but I could tell you that in all the times that I've had a bad situation, none of that stuff was on me, right? And it is what it is. And most, 99% of the people that I see come into a gun store when I was working behind a counter, like I said, we're average Joes, right? Like this is how I dress. Yeah, like I pulled up here today and just threw on a hoodie, right? Like this is what it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we're fighting for that middle and trying to sway them. I think some of our tactic needs to change in order to do that. I think like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I just like put out like a regular post I put out like, hey, if you put gun stickers or stickers of certain affiliations, on your vehicle, you can't be upset that your vehicle will be targeted, right? People lost their minds.
Yeah.
They were like, it's my right. I said, listen, you're missing the point of the post.
Yep.
I didn't tell you not to be proud. It's okay. But at that time, the political climate was even higher than it is now, right? We had protests. I worked undercover in the protests at that time. And I'm telling people, like, this is not the time really to be making political stances, right? I'm not telling you not to, but just be okay that there may be a consequence of doing that.
Be aware of all sides.
But
so
I've
said that to
so
people
much, man, for that.
There's not a sticker on my car.
Correct. Same.
Like, I have a dog magnet.
Yeah.
Like this, you know, the one, right? But that's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing about lock and load firearms. There's nothing about my pistol permit classes on there.
It's like, the opposite.
Well, yeah, but you look at my car.
I think I know which car is yours.
You look at my car. You don't know whose it is.
Correct.
But like it says, lock and load firearms in the back. Pistol permit classes. Cool. You're a bad guy.
Yeah.
That car's got a gun in it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
Right.
Correct.
But now you just smashed my window.
Correct.
Right.
And went through my stuff. And maybe
or not even that. Let's say they just oppose your views.
Just vandalize.
And they tend to
vandalize it.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
you know, crazy Karens.
Yeah. And I'm not, and like I said, I'm not knocking anybody's hustle for doing that. I totally understand why. I get it. You know, one of the other things that I think that we don't address enough in our community when it comes to gun laws is, let's just face it, like a lot of gun owners don't even know the laws.
No.
So many.
Yeah.
So that has been a subject for Michele and I, especially with HB 667 and like the brace
non-stop.
and the others.
Yeah.
It has been nonstop.
Yeah.
And it's picking up.
I had a guy 2 days ago, friend of mine, acquaintance, I guess we should say, older gentleman, come and talk to me about something that he was doing. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, you can't do just a personal transfer.
Yeah.
I said,
it's illegal.
Number
Anymore,
one, after Sandy Hook, you had to go through the state.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can't even, you have to go to a dealer. And he goes, well, it's a long gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what they think is the magical term.
I still,
it's a long gun. I can buy that on my driver's license. No, you can't.
I still have people call and say like, hey bro, like, so I forgot to register my assault weapon.
Whoopsie.
Like, what?
I've had people come in and they're like, oh, I want to buy the Connecticut other. I'm like, that's illegal. Like, since when? June?
Yeah. So, I mean, that
is the biggest problem.
I think there's a lot of uninformed people.
And you know what's funny? A lot of those, a lot of gunners will tell you the difference, the subtle differences in the model of a trigger, right?
Yeah.
And
but they can't keep track of laws.
Correct. Right?
Well, and the answer is always, well, there's so many, I don't understand them. And I get that.
Neither does the government.
Ask.
Correct. No, correct. There
Come
are
to
so
classes.
many.
Correct.
Like we had a legal seminar. We try to do 3 to 4 a year. It was with attorney Dave Catello. 50 people signed up. 47 people were in the room.
Yeah.
Like, and it was just about HB 667 and like learning the laws. Like, come to the class. It was $10. You have $10.
Correct.
Don't go to McDonald's that week.
Correct.
Well, and if you have a specific, okay, because here's the broad overcast, and that's what we've been doing on a lot of things, is here's your broad answers. If you have specifics, you need to talk to a lawyer.
Correct.
There's programs out there like USCCA, like US Law Shield, where you can talk to these attorneys.
Well, listen, I mean, I'll take you even further back. I was lucky enough for years, not lucky, but it's how I honed a lot of my craft, to do pistol permit classes, right? And this, we're talking about 2011, 2009, like after Sandy Hook, when it was bumping, you know, and the gun store I was affiliated with at the time was doing them 30 people, sometimes twice a week. And in that time, I would sometimes listen to other instructors that were teaching those classes, and I could not believe some of the stuff that was coming out of their mouth.
Yeah, like open carry was illegal.
Not even that. Like, I mean, just like they started to get into laws of use, you know, and self-defense. I'm like, what? Listen, you're gonna
USCCA wasn't around then.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. And
because like USCCA curriculum, I can talk about legal use of force.
Correct.
But
half of theirs are skewed. When you listen to them do those classes and what legal advice they're giving,
you shouldn't be giving it.
Period.
You shouldn't. Yeah. So one, you shouldn't be giving it. You know what it reminds me of? You guys might be old enough to remember this. Like when people used to go around and be like, yeah, my uncle had to register his hands as deadly weapons. Remember that?
Yep.
Like he was a triple black belt and like his hands are registered. Like that's the kind of stuff sometimes you'd hear in these classes.
Josh doesn't remember that.
He does.
I got the reference.
But
you still hear that.
Correct.
Shit I hear at the range from other instructors, I'm like, what the?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, like, another thing that kind of disappointed me when we talk about HB 6667. I think I was like number 62 to testify that day, and I think there was maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I say no more than 300. I think it was only like 200 people.
Yeah, I think it was mid 2s.
Yeah, 200. I know Mary was like 1. I was like 66.
Oh.
Yeah, she was
Mary
up there.
opened it up this time.
Yeah, she did. Because of course she's got a great story being a survivor of a home invasion. But we have probably 3 times that many NRA instructors. And I went down that list, and I know most of the FFL owners in our state. Where were they? Correct. Where were they?
Where were they on like the 2A rallies?
Correct.
Because you know what? I'm just going to put this out there at this point. The two Tuesdays prior to HB Satan 7 getting passed. Stole that word from Eddie Grant. I was there both Tuesdays. First Tuesday I was there for a solid 5-6 hours. And I was the only FFL there. I had an appointment with my legislator in this area. Second Tuesday I went. I had to come back early. My employee had to leave. Like, stuff happens. Now it was either the manager or the owner from Newington Gun Exchange was there, and then same thing for Tobacco Valley. I think that's the one in South Windsor.
Chris,
one of them. So either the owner or the manager was there.
Okay.
So 3 FFL showed up.
Correct.
I do believe, and I'm not 100%, that maybe, and I didn't testify. I submit verbal testimony. I haven't gotten into that. Going in person yet. Maybe next year. But I do the written testimony.
You do written and verbal when you get there.
When I get there, I do the written. I think there was 1 or 2 FFLs either the last year or the year before that I can remember that submitted verbal at least. But it's the big guys. Why?
But listen, why? Like, you could obviously look up how many FFLs we have. What about even the little guys selling out of their house?
Home based? Yeah,
correct.
There's like 5 in this town.
Correct.
Plus 2 stores.
That's what I'm saying. Where were they?
Because most of the time, and this is a general statement across. It's not meant to hurt anybody, but your home-based FFLs are also not in the loop.
But that's a
they
problem.
Have a federal firearms license. They should be.
I understand 100%, but a lot of them don't even know.
But you know whose fault that is? Ours. Because
ours being
the 2A community period, or whatever you want to name it, or even gun owners, because I really believe in peer-to-peer learning.
Yes.
Right. And if I don't know something, I'm either going to find out or find you an answer, or find you a person that knows the answer, and I'm going to educate you. I had a funny experience, and I'm not going to say the company because I'm just not. I don't want to do that. But there's a company that does some stuff for the police department regarding hiring. And I know the gentleman that owns it. Great guy. Great guy. And I had a conversation with him, and somewhere in this middle of the conversation, it filtered over to guns. And half of my brain said, just walk away, right?
And the other one was like, do it.
The other part of me is like, but you're Martin. And I was like, yeah. And we had
Which side won?
Yeah, that side won.
Okay.
So we had an 1.5 hour long conversation. It was an education.
Schooling.
Because I allowed him to speak, and he would say, well, blah, blah, blah. I said, that's actually completely false. Well, no, it is. Look it up. Right. And then I would go through it. We went all, and I defeated every single point of that. And we went all the way to the end. And the last thing we got to was assault weapons. And his explanation, he's not a gun guy, right? He's not a gun guy, although he works for law enforcement. He's not a gun guy. He proceeded to tell me, like, well, the destructive force of the assault weapon, right? So I asked
223.
Well, so I get him really good. So I said, listen, okay, cool. I get that. I said, there's a thing called physics. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but it's kind of how it works. But I said, let me ask you this question. If it is such a destructive weapon, right? I said, do you hunt? No, I don't hunt. I said, I didn't think you did. I have in the past, and, I do. I said, then why don't we just use it for every animal? And the 223 round at most in the state of Connecticut, if it's not a big coyote, you could probably whack a coyote with it.
Yep.
Okay. So am I using a 30-06 or a 308 or a 35 Remington? On deer,
30 cal or higher.
Yeah, if it's that destructive. And then, the answer is because I forgot who said it. Well, because like the meat, you wouldn't even be able to eat it. I'm like, oh my God, man. We had a conversation. I clued him in. And at the end, I said to him this. I said, listen, I didn't want to be adversarial with you, and I hope I wasn't, and I don't want you to take it that way. I said, but the reason I had this conversation with you is because you're very educated, right? And you talk to a lot of people, and you clearly have conversations with people around you. I said, you guys are spreading not even misinformation. It's just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I said, so think about how long you lived and you believe these things that, we spoke about and they're not true. I just don't want you to keep sending that message because it is not true.
So for anyone watching this that doesn't have a clue what we're talking about, an AR-15 shoots .223. That is .223, right? A 22 is .22. Now, 22 shoots about 1,000 feet per second. A 223 shoots about 3,300 feet per second. It is a glorified 22 that shoots 3 times as fast.
Sure.
It's not a 30 cal, right? We're decimals away from that. It doesn't have the kinetic energy like that. There's a cool thing called the Taylor knockdown factor. Look it up. Look up the chart, and it goes into physics and uses a mathematical equation to come up with that. Look that up one day. If you like that kind of stuff, it'll be interesting to you.
Yeah, but the problem is that they look scary in their military weapons.
Well,
they look like.
Yeah, but according to them, they're military and military grade. It's like, no.
Well, military grade's a horrible term
because and listen, and a lot of that has come from, unfortunately, a lot of that language has been allowed to be spoken, where certain organizations that were for gun rights should have put a stop to it, right? But they wanted to maintain a certain look or stay neutral, and that's what it became. It's and so when I say peer to peer, that's what it comes down to, and sometimes we just don't do that messaging correctly.
I agree. Right? I am a big one. My classes, everything. I want education. I want to teach people and then give them the tools to go find their own answers, so that eventually I'm not the point person. Correct. They can find their own information. Correct. And if they need something, we're always there to help.
Yeah, of course.
But I think education plays a big role, and I think we are missing our education component on how to get everybody up to date on what's going on. And back to your point before, the other side has a much better marketing. Yeah. They have much better advertising, marketing. They've been able to use certain terms and keywords and get it out there so that even our side uses their terms.
Correct.
Yeah.
I would tell you, when we talk about the other side of, it's not a political discussion for me necessarily, because you could be Republican or Democrat and still be pro-2A or anti-2A.
Correct. Correct.
Not caring what party you're in, right? The other side is basically people that think that outlawing citizens really from having guns is going to somehow make everybody safer, right? It's just, it's not going to happen.
No, it's going to make us all less safe.
And people point to Australia. Listen, we're not Australia, okay? And if we remember what happened in Australia during the lockdowns,
I was just going to say that.
And I don't want to get into that because it's a whole other subject, but I could just tell you once again, somebody said to me, we were speaking about a Polish delegation visiting the Polish police department, so their nationalized police department, visiting here. They visit quite often. They come through UNH, and this person said, well, they agree that we have too many guns. I said, well, that's funny, because if we had guns after 1945, we wouldn't be in communism.
Well, look at Israel.
Like how quickly we forgot about. We were disarmed. Like in the 80s, we lived. My grandmother, or their properties in a farm. There's a river. If you got caught fishing, you could go to jail. You had no recourse. Like there was no recourse. Like and I'm not saying the government's coming. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is, I believe in every amendment equally, right? But the hot topic amendment currently is the Second Amendment. Yeah. Right. That's the one that impacts everything else.
Well, Israel did the same thing. They didn't allow firearms for their regular citizens. And now they just put a thing out saying everybody needs to go get a gun.
Yeah, correct.
Nothing like wait until the last minute.
Correct. Yeah. And then you look at that particular country, that's really crazy, right? Because they've literally have lived in a war zone since that state was created. So I mean that's a really good example. Like, and people will say, well, we're not Israel. Yeah, you're right, we're not.
No, because
once again, why are you trying to punish me for something that I don't statistically contribute to?
That's what I was saying, class. Why am I, the average gun owner, being punished for the crimes of an insane person? right?
Law abiding.
Yeah.
You have a permit. You have an FFL. Same with me.
Went through multiple background checks. My fingerprints have been fingerprinted more times than you would think.
Yeah. You know, like, why are we being put under these? And that's where it gets tough. And when you were talking about the criminals and the penalties that they pay and the consequences that they pay, right? That's where it's frustrating for me, is that I'm losing the ability to have certain firearms because the bad guys are using these firearms and not paying a price.
Correct.
That bothers me.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I think I looked it up. I think rifles, right? Because and that's the other thing with reporting that people don't understand. There is not like a national database of reporting. Like if you try to look up crimes committed with what guns, it depends on how they're reported in the police department. Some departments may not that they mislead on purpose.
Yeah.
It's just the way that the reporting is done, right? The way that you get that particular report. Most of your reporting of violent crimes comes from NIBRIS, and not all departments contribute to NIBRIS, which is the national database, right? Not all departments do that.
Then that's going to be skewed.
So it's skewed. It's instantly skewed.
Yeah.
Right. And I actually looked this up last week. New York, California, some of those types of states are actually like 17% of that stuff is reported. Like California, I think was at 17%, or New York, one of the two.
Really?
Yeah. You can look.
They show lower crime stats. So
correct.
Their values of things,
correct.
Like property values go up.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, and
well, it makes more sense.
So it can be skewed. But I think the last time I took a look, and the best number that I could get was that rifles, period, long guns, are used in about 12% of crime nationally. Now, and when we also say crime, we have to look at how is that reported. Are we talking about some yahoo just busting off a shotgun in his backyard and then he gets arrested for that because he's drunk? Mm-hmm. I do consider that a crime, but that's a little bit different than a guy walking into a liquor store and robbing it, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. So it's like at 12%. My opinion is why you go after the rifles is because once you outlaw that or ban it and crime is still not affected, what's the next thing?
Pistols.
That's the way at least it looks to me. I may be completely wrong and somebody can change my mind. But my thing is, why would I attack something that statistically is insignificant? Right. And when people bring up numbers and they'll say, well, like, in this particular instance, this many people died because a rifle was used. Yes, I agree.
An outlier, though.
Correct. Right. Yeah, it's an improbable. It's traumatic. It's horrible. You hope you it never happens.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, it does. But what about the 600 plus homicides in Chicago a year?
Yeah.
But political organizations don't care about that,
and you don't want to hear it.
Correct.
Or they don't want to.
Correct. Because you can't use it in the same way, and it's unfortunate is what it is. The funny thing is when I was talking to this gentleman about the AR, I specifically said, I said, I've been in my department for 15 years and I can't name you one homicide that happened with a rifle.
Wow.
And I can name you probably on my hands in as much shots fired and whatever we have, the times that somebody has been shot with anything but a handgun caliber, right? It's very low. The gentleman's secretary goes, I asked him, I said, do you know why that is? And the secretary, who's not a gun person either, she goes, it's probably because they can't hide it.
What?
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's why nobody wants a rifle, because you can't hide it. Right? Because if you like drive, you can't throw a rifle out the window in a car chase, right? Like,
True.
Completely different, right? It's the reason why we don't carry rifles.
Yeah.
Right? When we talk about concealment, what do? We try to go to the smallest gun that offers us the best shootability.
Yeah.
Right? So criminals aren't that much different.
Well, no.
Yeah,
no.
So once again, it's an insignificant statistic.
Is that statistic still true? You haven't been to nothing with a rifle?
I can remember one shooting. We had a homicide, which was like an outlier. And this is right when I got on with a 456 Casull. Yeah. But no, like a majority of our, or any pretty much cities, crimes are usually committed with a handgun because it's smaller. I will say that is going to change a little bit, and it is slowly starting to change. We're not seeing it in the Northeast. You are seeing it down south. You're getting more AR pistols. used, right? Like this became like the Draco thing and all that. Like,
Yeah.
you're definitely you're going to see
short things.
Sure, you're going to see more of that. But then you're talking about a rifle caliber, but still a handgun.
Yeah, you're still looking at a pistol.
Correct.
I mean,
ATF
it's
definition,
bigger than
it's a pistol.
Right,
Correct.
it's bigger than a Hellcat, but it's still a
Correct.
pistol.
Correct.
So,
and then the other thing is, I asked the Judiciary Committee, I would love to see the statistics on these gun crimes that you're using to push these laws, and show me where pistol permit holders or law-abiding citizens are committing these in any numbers where it's significant, because I could tell you it's not, right? Because we know that. Yeah. Like if a pistol permit in our community, right? If we have somebody that commits a crime and they're a permit, like we know.
Yeah.
Like let's face it, this state is very small.
Mm-hmm.
We pretty much know everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we would instantly know that. Like one of the things on there, I think, was that you weren't allowed to carry a firearm into an establishment that serves alcohol.
Yeah, that was an original thing.
Correct.
Did not pass. By
Correct.
The way.
Yeah.
Don't want to get people confused.
Yeah. So I said, okay, well, in the city I work in, we have a Taco Bell that serves alcohol.
Do you really?
Yeah, we did. I don't know if it's still open, but we did have one for a while. That means a TJF Fridays, or I don't know if those are still around.
Yeah, they are.
Yep.
Or a Chili's, whatever. Once again, show me, if you're pushing this, show me the statistic that we need to push this. Like, this is a significant thing for us to look at.
Yeah.
Out of all the things we're going to concentrate on, this is the thing we're going to look at.
So I think one of the things that killed that part of it was the
counterpoint.
It was stupid. The counterpoint was, well, there's so many car break-ins, so if I go to a restaurant, I'm going to, leave my gun in my car, and somebody's going to break in and then steal my gun.
That is true. That does happen.
So I think that helped kill part of it.
Hold on. That does happen. Therefore, it goes back to my original statement. We were talking about not putting gun stickers on your cars. Or leaving your gun unlocked in your vehicle.
Correct. But I have another question. Okay, because this goes back a little bit from what we were talking about.
Always has another question.
Of course.
Law enforcement in general, is there anything that law enforcement can do differently to maybe get through to our legislators and have these conversations? Because it seems, and I may be out of the loop, maybe I don't know, but it seems like either the legislators aren't listening to law enforcement, or because the higher up echelon, the administration, is, like we talked about, hired by certain politicians, they can't or won't.
No, I don't. So I'll say this. At least I could speak for my department and most of the departments that I work with.
Okay.
This becomes a discussion, right? This is almost like the Colin Kaepernick discussion, right? And what I mean by that is this. We have a right to the First Amendment when we can speak out.
Correct.
We can't necessarily speak out when we're in uniform and on duty. And
Correct.
that's understandable, right? And the same thing with Colin Kaepernick. He has the right to kneel.
Yes.
But if the 49ers decide to go not in our uniform, then that's what they decided.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it is. You signed the contract. You're part of that.
Right.
And I'm going to make a very general statement, and I don't know. First of all, most law enforcement officers are not gun people.
No.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
And maybe
look at the people that come into the stories.
Correct.
I get more firefighters and EMTs in here than I do cops.
Correct. So we don't tend to be firearms people. I always thought when I became a cop, I'm like, oh, everybody carries a gun. I'm like, hey, dude, like it just doesn't happen, right?
No.
It's just part of the job, and sometimes
it's what they give you, and they keep it in their locker at work, and they don't bring it home.
Sure.
Yep.
Those questions that you guys get in the store, because I became like the de facto firearms guy in my department, guys would go, hey man, is this like, can I do this? And I'm like, yeah, you could do that, or no, you can't. Like, no, dude, you have to go through this process. So I think that's one. Two, I think for law enforcement, it's almost the same as gun owners when we talked about voting. Who cares? My voice doesn't matter. Most gun owners don't vote because they're like, oh, my vote doesn't count. Cops are like, dude, we fight enough battles. Now you want us to fight the battle of like this other thing? And
most of them say, and I can carry anyway because I'm
correct.
a cop. So
I was gonna add that too.
Okay.
And it's funny, that you say that, because I always tell people this. I'm not a cop. I work as a cop, but I'm not a cop. I'm a father and I'm a U.S. citizen. And when I leave this profession, I'm going to remain a father and a U.S. citizen. So I want to make sure that I retain those rights, whether I wear the uniform or I don't wear the uniform. But you are right. I think cops are like, nah, cool, I'm exempt.
Yep.
But at some point you might not be. Then what?
Well, and that's what, even when the officers come in that don't have a permit, So they put everything on their badge.
Yeah.
And I tell them on a regular basis, you need to get a permit. Well, why? I can buy it on my badge. Well, what are you going to do with it when you no longer have a badge?
Or if you get fired for something like an HR
what
issue.
What if you go to admin leave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it happened to me. I could tell you. My training records got messed up. I missed the 30 minutes of our yearly training, and I got decertified as a police officer.
Oh.
And I was decertified for like, I want to say like 3 or 4 weeks. And it was like an admin oversight.
Yeah.
But it's a big oversight because there has to be like an emergency hearing to reinstate you. And it was one of those phone calls that you never like, hey man, come to the office. I'm like, that's weird.
Like,
you know, then I show up and they're like, hey man, we need your badge and your gun. I'm like, wait, what?
Excuse me.
And I'm like, do I have to throw my phone out? No, I'm kidding. No. And they were like, listen, man, there's like the person at the academy, there was an oversight. They should have scheduled you for this class. You didn't. Accidentally, that decertified you. We're going to try to fix it. But in the meantime, you are no longer a police officer. I have a permit. So I was good, but I'm like, oh my God, if I didn't, then what?
Yeah.
Yeah. What does happen
So
if
do
they
you
don't have
get,
a
You
permit?
can't carry.
What did you do for work? Did they pay you?
No, I got put. Yeah. Because it was like an admin thing.
Yeah.
So, they were like, hey, you could just come in and like
Admin.
do records,
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
And you're like, nah.
Yeah, that's kind of what happened. So I just took the time off.
Yeah.
I'm like, nah, just chill at home. But yeah, like those things do happen. Then what?
Yeah.
Right? Like now you got to go through this whole process of like reapplying and stuff like that. And I think what I tell young police officers, or when I teach at the academy now, is I listen, there's a difference between carrying a gun for a living and carrying a gun for a living.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
You should put that in a t-shirt.
Yeah, I know, right?
You already got that working.
Yeah. Take the A out of it.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it completely changes how you look at that firearm.
Do you see light bulbs go off in the classroom? When you do that?
Sometimes, yeah. I think now, because the community, the 2A community, the training community has changed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting to get more of that. You're starting to get people more interested in firearms, more knowledgeable. You are with the younger generation. But remember this. Now think about it this way. Connecticut, and I could tell you because when SurveyMonkey used to be free and I worked at the other gun store, not the gun store, sorry, just another gun store.
Not this one.
Not this one and not the gun store. Nothing against the gun store. I'm just don't
One
want
of
to
those other
misrepresent.
ones.
Yes, correct. When I worked there, I did a survey, and when people would come in, I would take my phone. I'm like, hey man, just answer these 3 questions, right? And the questions were like, have you ever taken a firearms class other than a pistol permit class?
Oh.
It's like 4%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they don't. They don't. The follow up.
It's amazing.
I offer 3 classes through like the USCCA.
Yeah.
And like a lot of it, like some of it's legal, some of it's just like building a home protection plan.
Nope.
No. It's free.
Yeah. No.
Like
I would like, and I'll tell you, I still keep a client list, but it's the same clients that would come back. Like to get new people, it was not happening. And I'll tell you, I think part of it was they would come and all of a sudden notice that they're not as good as they think they are. Right now, some of that has
logical dimmy.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that. Like, just people have, I think, unrealistic expectation of what's going to happen if you're in that type of scenario. One, gear, all of a sudden, like that cool holster didn't work like I thought it was.
Yep. No.
Right?
Yeah.
I couldn't shoot before the red dot. Now I shoot even worse with it. Like those types of things. Right?
Yep.
And it was very hard to get people in the door. And I don't understand that. Like, we have pretty good training companies, you have Frank at Patriot Performance, right? You have Black Sheep, you have Tom at Tom's Defensive Handgun Training, or whatever his Tom's Defensive Training, whatever it is, T4 out in China. Like, you have companies out here, right?
There's actually quite a few.
You do.
Uh-huh.
You have SIG, you have Ridgeline, right? You have Ridgeline, but nobody goes.
We had you.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
No, you're absolutely correct. Not enough. And that's something I push a lot.
Not enough. Nobody.
When I sell my holsters, I tell people all the time, especially the newbies, they come in, they go, okay, well, I'm going to get this holster. And I'm like, you need to take classes. You need to learn how to draw.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah. It's like, no, because at the end of the day, when shit hits the fan,
correct.
You're not going to be all that in a bag of chips.
I have watched people draw a holster at a range, and I'm like, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
They're going to hurt themselves.
Or someone else.
Yeah.
I was lucky because, pretty much my whole career in law enforcement, I dressed like a civilian. So, like, I didn't have the cool holster, right? Like, I ran what I'm running now, right? Kydex holster, good belt, concealed.
Yeah.
That's how I ran the whole time. I'd love to run appendix, but I like tacos, so it's not happening. It's just not. I'm going to be honest. Okay. And anybody that tells me that they wear a Glock 34 with a X300 appendix has never sat in a car for 12 hours. All right. So I wear 3 o'clock, good Kydex holster. And I'll say from the other end, like, people invest so much money in holsters, but then they never purchase a good belt.
Correct.
You know, they're like, oh, my wife had Kohl's Cash.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
No,
and I'm like,
that's why we got into carrying belts with my holster company. Correct. Because people were coming in with the Walmart specials.
Holster, and they complain about the
holster.
Yes,
my holster doesn't sit right.
Yeah.
You need a foundation.
Yeah. So we went kind of off topic, but it gets within that. Like, once again, when we talk about law-abiding citizens that own firearms or responsible gun owners, part of that responsibility is training.
Correct.
And it's not only training at the range, but it's also training in the laws and, the current tools used against you. Listen, I understand why most people have a hard time training in the state of Connecticut, because our ranges are not set up to do that.
No.
Right? You can't go to a range and draw most places. And I understand why, because there's some yahoos there and they're going to, it's going to mess up. But seek out those opportunities. And listen, when I was running classes, I mean, they were filled, and I was doing everything 2-hour classes on a Wednesday, 6 to 8. Like, I understand, I'm a father, man. I don't want to be on a Saturday 8 hours somewhere with a guy that talks a lot like me, right? Or ammo's expensive, and people are like, bro, I can't blow through 1,000 rounds. So I made sure that those courses were so tailored to, like, hey, man, we're going to get through 100 rounds, but this 100 rounds is really going to count. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do it on a Wednesday so your wife doesn't complain you not being home to mow the lawn. Mm-hmm. And my classes at that time were like $125. And where I was teaching, it was an open range, no bays, like we could move around. But I'll tell you a funny thing that happened too. When I did that, from the first class, I would have, because what did everybody say? Hey man, are we going to get to move and shoot? I'm like, dude, I've seen you stand and shoot. And this is a 10-round magazine state. You might want to save the ammo. But no, it's true though.
But by the end of your class, they were better, right?
Correct. No. So what I did is I did allow them to move and start to understand that moving and shooting was not as easy. Mm-hmm. So I would set up certain drills. Then I get a phone call from another instructor, and it wasn't Frank from Patriot Reforms. It wasn't him. We're actually pretty good. We're actually good. And they were like, hey man, I heard you're teaching beginners to move with a gun. And I'm like, yep. So do you just give them a gun and you let them walk down the range? I'm like, yeah. That's dangerous. I'm like, they walked here with a gun. Right? Like, when they got here, they had a gun on them. When they leave, they're going to walk with a gun. They've pretty much walked their whole entire life. I don't think that's the problem we need to concentrate on. I said, is there like a belt level they need to reach before we do that? Because what it was doing was messing up their business model.
Okay.
Because they would sell you 6 classes before they let you move from one cone to another and fire a gun.
Oh.
And I was saying, no, we don't have to do that.
I'm curious. That is.
Yeah. And I set up like my basic drill was just 2 cones about 10 feet apart. And I would let them decide first. Like, I would let them run it. Obviously safe one person at a time. I would say, all right, man, I'm going to hit this beeper. You're going to draw your gun. You're going to move to that cone. And when you get to that cone, you're going to fire. Mm-hmm. And it was like watching monkeys try to solve a puzzle, right? Because all of a sudden you're like, they're just like, why are you walking like that? And it was funny. We'd have, I'd tape it. We'd laugh about it. Then I would show them what I think they should do. And we'd get back to biomechanics and how the body moves and stuff like that. But people got like, bro, they're beginners. I'm like, they walk here with a gun.
Yeah.
They came here with a gun. They're going to go to Cumberland Farms. They're going to be buying a piece of gum. And if there's a robbery in there, they're going to be on their feet.
Uh-huh.
Like, we have to talk about this.
Yeah.
Right. And the problem is, as an industry itself, as a training industry, we just don't do enough of that. Right. And listen, I would talk about laws, what you can do, what you can't. I was never one to be like, don't go there. I'm like, hey, I'd send students to guys all, hey, man, check out Frank, like go train with Frank and see what he's doing,
Mm-hmm.
Because
you should learn from different instructors. Correct. Because you're going to learn 100%. Something different from everybody.
100%.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah, bad or good.
Yeah.
Everybody brings something to the table, and everybody teaches you something a little different.
Except for that guy, Dust.
Okay. Except
not
for
that guy.
But they do, and some give you more than others.
Yeah.
Even
different perspective.
Well, and even some of the worst classes, you're probably going to take one thing away from it.
Yeah, you're going to take how not to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hope.
Yeah. No. Either way, I mean, we don't do enough of that, right? We don't. These are the things, like people come in and people that own multiple guns, and then if you ask them to shoot them,
yeah, that guy I was telling you about before.
I know.
Collects guns, and I'm like, you can't hit the Bronzeville apart at 15 feet.
They don't even know what they own. They own several guns. Well, what kind?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a Glock.
Yeah, 100%. So
it's stainless.
Yeah,
like that's cool, man.
It's a 9.
It shoots 380. When you actually see it, it shoots 45.
Yeah, yeah. I used to stand. I'd stand behind a counter and I mean, I'll say where I worked because obviously I'm cool with them. But Doug gave me a first chance at Delta. I was known as the shop dog. I just hung out there. Like that's how I was the longest unpaid employee of Delta Arsenal, 15 years. And when he was in Meriden, I used to just hang out there. And then one day he's like, dude, I'm going to do something. You want to just watch the store? I'm like, yeah, all right. I just never left.
It happens a lot in gun stores, believe it or not.
Yeah, I know. And I did training there, and I would watch people walk in and they're like, hey, I want to buy this. And I'm like, why? Right? Because like, why do you want to?
Because my husband told me this gun was good.
Yeah. That's a big one, right? Well, why do you want an HK USP 45? Well, because it's in a video game. I'm like, what are you going to do with it? Right? And they're like, well, carry it. I'm like, yeah, you're 5'2" and 300 pounds. It's probably, or 110 pounds. Probably not going to happen. Right? And I don't want, and I would say, I don't want you to make that choice that's uninformed. Right? So I think that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything is so. Listen, I'm a capitalist. I get it. We're business driven. But isn't our responsibility also, there's a greater social responsibility of saying, hey, man, that's a bad idea.
Or their very first gun, they want to come in and buy a Ruger 380 or the tiniest gun they can possibly go.
Don't. That's a whole physics, people.
Yeah. It's like, you realize you're not even really good at target shooting yet. And you want to take the tiniest gun that has the least amount of accuracy. Good.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I mean, you guys know, obviously because you're in FFL, but that just drives me.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy.
And not the, I don't know, screw it. Females all the time, they're like, oh, I want the tiny little gun.
Yeah.
No.
Well, because
physics.
Correct.
Like, I like my Ruger LCP Max. It's a great pocket gun. It's for deep concealment.
It's your secondary.
Like, that is when I'm going somewhere I'm really not supposed to carry. I have it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. It's smaller than my cell phone. That thing's a snappy little shit.
Yeah.
They're uncomfortable. And then they buy those and they hate the way it shoots and then they don't shoot anymore.
Well, I'll tell you actually before that, what ruins most women shooters is their significant other.
Yep.
What happens
Even in
is
pistol permit classes, it's annoying as all.
100%. Because here's what they do. They meet a woman. They want to show them how badass they are. They're like, look, I can shoot this 45, but you can't. No, they can't. So why would you give them that gun? That's just dumb.
Yeah.
Well, and at the end of the day, they can if you teach them.
Correct, but you don't put a first-time driver in an 18-wheeler.
True.
Right? Like I've never driven. Yep. Hey man, there's 36 gears here. All right, and this thing is 38 feet long. Let's see what you can do. Die. And we're going through a drive-through of a Taco Bell. Okay. It's
going to be another drive-through entrance.
Correct.
No, you're absolutely correct. It's or they think in their own mind they have to have revolvers because it's easier.
Listen, there's one store in this state that probably sold more revolvers to women than any store I know.
Well, and they believe
that's the solution.
I can't rack a slide.
Well, you can't pull the trigger either.
I want to know what store it was.
It's on the Berlin Turnpike, but and I'm not saying now, but most of the time when we see women come in, they would come in with. And listen, I used to call it the pull test. I would unload the revolver. I'd take them on a range. I said, what I want you to do, depending on the woman too. I said, I want you to squeeze this trigger 5 times fast. They can't.
No.
They get to 3, and it's because it's a 15-pound trigger pull.
Yeah.
That means they have to continuously do this. And listen, I carry a revolver undercover. I didn't like shooting it, and I'm 6 feet, 200 pounds.
Yeah.
I did not enjoy it. Like I hate shooting a revolver to this day.
Plus,
and I'm not that accurate.
Plus, as a female, and you hear this all the time, when women come in, and I understand, they want something to protect themselves. Yes. So you buy the gun that only has 5 rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, if you need more than one.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, that guy. I'm going to hit him right between the eyes.
Even if you're the best shot ever, don't you want to have a little extra?
Yeah.
The guy might move.
I mean, that's like saying that you just need 2 gallons of gas to get from here to New Haven. That's what you're going to put in your gas tank.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy.
But it is. We make these stupid, like, I have nothing against 1911 guys, but
I do.
I
like don't.
1911.
But here's what I kind of say. They're like, 45. I said, bro, I'll load up this 22. Can I shoot you? Well, no. I said, exactly. But I don't want to get shot with anything.
Uh-huh.
But those are like the gun things, right? We laugh about them because they're funny, but they're true.
Yeah.
Right? They're stereotypes within our community that are true.
Yeah.
We all have
Old white guy, 1911.
Yeah.
A leather holster.
Yeah.
Pancake.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. 5 o'clock.
But he only carries it to the range.
Yeah.
And openly.
Listen, I was blown away until I started standing behind the counter. One of the craziest questions, and I'm sure you had this in the pistol permit class. Can I carry my gun loaded?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God. I'm like, let me ask you a question. I'm like, you have a flashlight at home? Yeah. Are the batteries in it?
I just say to them, I'm like, it's pretty useless unloaded, man. It's a good paperweight at that point.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, you'd be surprised how many people carry unchambered.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Not surprised.
Right.
Mm-mm.
And then for a while, I'm sure you remember probably like early to mid 2000s when the Israeli systems came out where they're, drawing and, well, I'm just going to draw them. Dude, listen, the number one malfunction is induced by the user. And what happens when that second hand can't do that? Because it is opening a door, holding your child, holding your significant other.
Or
not even shot, like falling. And
that, but like, so I teach this, and it's actually the class I'm teaching tonight. But when adrenaline happens and the endorphins dump into your body, you lose blood to your extremities. So you ain't functioning that gun how you think you're going to function that gun.
Oh, no,
really good way to practice that, and again, this is curriculum from them, is to put your hands in ice water. Then have your gun, have your magazine loaded with snap caps.
See,
try to function that gun, because that's what's going to happen. You have that loss of blood flow.
Tactical Timmy can rack it with his heel. It's okay.
Yeah. So listen,
on those plastic Glock sights that he never upgraded. Got it.
I'll give you another one that I used to get all the time in classes. Guys would be like, "We're going to practice tactical reload." I'm like, "Do you carry an extra magazine?"
They're like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's in my pocket.
So how do you do that?
So the thing is that a lot of people don't carry an extra mag, and I'm okay with that. But as an instructor, I recognize that 99% of the class doesn't carry an extra mag. So therefore, I'm not going to play infotainment and teach them reloads.
Correct.
I'm also going to say, I want you to understand something. You should have an extra mag, not because you're going to expand 15 rounds and it's done. It's because there's more likely of a chance that you're going to hit the mag release and it's going to fall out.
You meant 10 rounds, right?
Oh, 10. Yes, sorry.
Remember, he's law enforcement.
Yeah. But most like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? Than anything else.
Was it a Glock 19, by the way?
Yeah. So the other thing that's funny with that caliber thing, and I used to say this in classes prior to the ban, I'd rather have 15 rounds of 9 than 8 or 10 rounds of 45. Now with the ban, I'm like, if I'm only going to carry 10 rounds, maybe it'll be 45. Right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If I could shoot the 45 as well as the 9.
Correct.
Yeah.
See, I shoot a 45 better than a 9. It's from the very beginning. I didn't get into 9s until probably about 5 years after I had my permit. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I wanted a smaller gun.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I have to learn 9s and I have to get used to it. They bother my wrist way more than a 45.
Can we just talk shit about the 40 though? Fuck the 40.
Oh, fuck the 40. No,
I like the 40.
You're a loser.
Glock 23 is my second gun.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I do have the 9mm conversion for it, which is what I run in it. Yeah. But, I have some 40 ammo lying around.
Sure, so do I.
I do too.
I'm going to ship it to the UK.
I'll counter that with saying, like, my first gun was Beretta M9. Mm-hmm. I used it for the armored truck company for 3 years, so I practiced a lot with that gun.
Yep.
Great with that gun.
Well, it's also, that's a heavy gun.
It's a good shooting gun.
Yeah. So
sucks to carry concealed, but it's a good shooting gun.
Wintertime, it's okay.
And everything to work with. The first one that got me into 9s, believe it or not, was a HEKV P9.
Oh, what a surprise.
I shot that.
You and your German guns.
I know. But I shot that one and was like, okay, I might like a 9. I can work with this. But I'm a SIG girl, so very quickly moved right over to SIGs. I love my old.
Let's say West German on them.
Yeah, they're. Listen, I mean, in the end, right? The discussion always. This is. What's the best gun?
It's a
the one that works when you need it, right?
What you can work with.
Correct.
It's
and people are like, well, what do you carry? What What do I drive? Do you drive the same thing? Like, are you gonna take recommendations on that?
Mm-hmm.
I know what I carry. I know what I like. I grew up on Glocks. That's what I was issued. That's what I mostly carry. And the only two other guns that I really carry other than Glock is an Archon Type B or a Walther PDP.
Mm-hmm.
And Undercover, it was Taurus revolvers.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna tell you why. Because they were $100. Okay. And the other reason was because they look like crap, and like, you know, working that, if you were ever found, they were like, oh, that's a piece of junk. But and I could fire it from my pocket.
Yep.
So it had no moving parts. So if I kept it in my hoodie or I kept it in my jacket, I knew that gun, 100%, all of them have to be. So that gun would function for me for those 5 rounds. I'm in a different situation in those kinds of things because I have a backup team.
Right.
I only have to get through so much if I needed to do that. So I was a revolver guy, right? And I'm going to be honest with you, later when I, you know, did more and more of it, I just stopped carrying a gun, to be honest with you, on a lot of stuff. It just didn't, like when I worked in the protests, a gun was useless. You're in the middle of 5,000 people.
Yeah.
On 95. Like, I skateboarded down 95. I have video of it. It's pretty cool. Yeah, like I had my skateboard and I was just skateboarding down 95, and they're like yelling at me like on the thing. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Who's ever gonna get to say they did this?" Going to West Haven, I'll be back. I mean,
being recorded, right?
Yeah. And you and I know. And you know, you knew me back then, so you know what I look like hair down here, hair down here, right? It was like really cool. But
he looked undercover.
Yeah. So, you know, it was a lot of fun, but in those moments I didn't carry a firearm.
Yeah, I can see.
I
definitely see the purpose of that.
Yeah, it was like, well, how's it going to help me?
Yeah,
right.
You know,
right.
So, I will tell you, during that time, I had clients come to me and they're like, like, this is bad. Like, what do I do if I drive into a protest? Don't. Like, you know, there's TV and they're happening, right? Like, and then we got back to the sticker thing. I'm like, listen, this is why I don't put stuff on my car, right? But so I said, listen, when you come to class, I have the solution. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, just come to class. They're like, okay. So I had a whole bunch of cardboard boxes and I would cut them up, and I had a Sharpie marker, and I would be like, defund the police. I'm like, put this in your car. And they're like, what do I do? I'm like, you drive into a protest, you park, you get out, you hold the sign so you can get to a safe location. It's an insurgency at that point. Like, why would you get out of the car at that point and make any political statements in a crowd of even 100 people,
you know,
20?
Not a horrible idea.
No, it is. Listen, I literally was handing out signs in class, and people were like, yo, that's brilliant. I'm like, put it in your car. Yeah. And I'm telling you, like, if you get overwhelmed, just get out of your car, hold the sign, chant whatever they're chanting, and the car is insured. Yeah. And leave.
Yeah.
And it'll most likely be fine, right? Like, don't try to drive through it. Like, and people were like calling me, they're like, do you know if there's a protest? I'm like, it's on TV. We're gonna be going to New York today. Just letting you know. It'll be a bad time to go shopping or see the Christmas tree.
I can't.
You know, we're in an age of technology.
Sidetrack on the Christmas tree. Go. You know, they protect that thing with fucking, like, I won't call it SWAT, but NYPD packing fucking ARs. Like, why?
Because it's a fire hazard. No, I don't know.
Probably.
I don't know.
Because it is the Christmas tree.
Yeah, it's a symbol.
I'm sure it's a, you know,
it's the tree.
So I'll tell you
a possibility of a attack.
I'll tell you a funny story. So our city has a Christmas tree that they put up every year.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you guard it?
No, but here's a funny story. This is quite a ways back. A guy climbed it.
That makes sense.
No, this is the best part of the story. You know what his name was? Noel.
How'd they get him down?
I think they just talked him down. They didn't want to call him the sniper team. Nah, they just
can't hurt Noel.
No, would have made it been great if we had like Christmas boxers and like antlers. So we can better stories. Maybe I'll add it next time.
Maybe you can go on vacation.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean,
the white coats are coming.
Yeah. But, you know, getting back to like the community, like the community isn't just gun ownership. You know, it isn't just standing up for the Second Amendment. It's knowing all these other encompassing things.
Correct.
And,
100%.
You know, and the unification too of kind of amongst ourselves. Like, you know, it just doesn't exist, man. There's these like hot button topics and people just don't want to agree with them. And, you know, you said you didn't speak and you feel like you didn't do enough. You still did more than 99% of the people that have an FFL. Right? Like, So, and you felt it wasn't enough. How did those people that have the FFLs that didn't do anything? How did they feel?
Not even the FFLs, just general gun owners.
Sure,
he did way more.
They don't care. Yeah, that's the problem. Especially the FFL owners.
Yeah. And people would say always, I'm really big. People would start a discussion behind a counter, and I'm like, did you vote?
Yeah.
And they're like,
no.
Yeah. And I'm like, listen, then we're not going to have this discussion.
Right.
And they're like, my vote doesn't count. I'm like, I guess you're not going to know.
That's going to be I've said this before. It's going to be a future episode. Talking about the House 81st district in Southington, which got decided by one single vote.
One vote. Yeah.
So
one vote.
Your vote matters, guys.
No, but you got to understand, everybody's on Facebook. They're all bitching there. Doesn't that count?
But and
Southington Politics is a really fun page.
Yeah. And here's the thing. You may not overturn the election, but if you show enough force, they think twice on the other side.
I tell people all the time, whether your representatives and senators know who you, agree with you or not, they should know who you are.
Correct.
Plain and simple.
Correct.
We're not overturning any elections. We're talking about
Sorry, guys. Yeah. I apologize. You're completely right. I don't
know you too.
Yes, yeah. We are not. This is
changing seats.
Yeah.
We're talking about voting.
Correct. Wrong term. Yes, exactly. I 100% agree with you. So I think that that's a big component that we talk about, but once again, we don't actually do.
It's all of what we talked about, the education, the knowledge. It goes back down to just magazines versus clips. In my classes, I'm stressed that I can't stand. My thing is the anti-gunners use the wrong terminology, make up the wrong terms, make things scarier than they need to be.
Sure.
We as gun owners should always have the proper terminology, be correct in what information we have, and share said information. And that's where I come in with that kind of stuff and how I feel. And it just, I don't even use the word weapon because that makes it scary.
I use firearm.
Firearm is how I use it. Firearms
I don't even use the
word
gun.
Yeah.
Just because it's made to be scary. So let's call them what they are. They're firearms.
Well, and I tell people in my classes or newbies that I see in buying holsters or in the store or whatever, and I talk to them and they'll go, I bought my first gun, but I'm really nervous. I'm like, look, have you ever used a power drill? Yeah. Okay. Have you, and these are guys or girls, it doesn't matter. Have you ever used a bandsaw or a table saw or a circular saw? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, were you afraid of it the first time you ever used it? And they're like, yeah. I said, are you afraid of it now? No. It's the same thing. It's a tool. Get to know it.
You know what I kind of tell people? And I said, listen, you're alive this long because that is built into you to be afraid of something exploding in your hands.
Yes.
Like we only have two fears, innate fears as human beings: loud noises and heights. Everything else we learn. Right? And I didn't make that up. You could look that up.
Are those statistics?
The statistics, yeah. So a loud noise is how we survive.
Correct.
We're afraid of loud noises. This thing now is essentially, right, exploding in your hand, the cartridge.
It's a loud noise.
Yep, a lot of noise, and there is recoil. Yeah, it's okay.
That's why first gun owners, and when they first start shooting at classes, they're all like leaning away and away and away and away. Yeah. And I'm like, step up, guys, step up.
Cool. Lean into it. Your arms can go as far as they want to, but lean into the
everything in your body's telling you get away. You don't.
I'll give you one. When I started shooting and people would say squeeze the trigger and the gun going off should surprise you. I said, listen, let me put it to you in perspective. Okay. When I was on the SWAT team, if I'm the first guy through the door and you're the hostage, do you want me to be surprised by my first shot? Bang! Oof! So I used to tell people there's two types of surprises.
It's not a hostage situation anymore.
Yeah. There's two types of surprises. There's good surprises and bad surprises. Good surprises are like happy birthday. Bad surprise, I'm pregnant.
Does that happen to you a
personal
lot?
experience?
No, not at all. No, actually, no, not personal experience.
I didn't know. Today, you never know. You could be pregnant.
True.
It's 23.
So that's a bad surprise, right? And like when you tell people that they should be surprised by their gun going off, that's literally the opposite of firearm safety.
Yeah.
Yes.
I should not, but I remember I heard this so many times.
They teach it. The NRA actually uses
the
that
NRA.
term.
It should be a surprise break.
Yeah.
And I tell them,
why should I be surprised my gun went off?
And students look at me and go, what?
Yeah,
And I'm like, well, not that kind of a surprise at all. It's just don't anticipate. That's what you just don't anticipate.
So you don't anticipate the recoil.
Yeah, and the anticipation isn't even a thing. It's off rhythm squeeze, really. There's no anticipation. Yeah, so it's just everybody tightens on the gun when it goes off. It's just some people do it out of rhythm and some people don't.
All right, I got one question to wrap this up. So given like the gun control measures,
correct.
Do you just Martin have any alternative like approaches to addressing like criminal access to firearms and criminals getting guns?
In a utopian world, right? In utopian America, I think one of the issues here is, right, we're not a democracy, right? We're a republic.
Yeah.
So the states get
republic.
Yep. So the states get to retain kind of their laws, right, and how they do it. I will say that the relaxing of some of those laws, especially on transfers, not in the state of Connecticut, but in other states, does contribute to guns being trafficked. There's states out there, and I'm not talking about constitutional.
Well, yeah,
carry.
it contributes to like a straw purchase.
Correct.
So, like an example, like Billy Bob goes and
Correct.
buys a gun
Correct.
and then sells it to his buddy Jimmy,
Yep.
without having to go through any sort of background
Correct.
check. Jimmy just got a gun,
or even without a record,
Right.
just not even knowing who you really sold it
It's
to.
your buddy.
Yeah, correct.
He knew his buddy.
Correct. And when people say the gun show loophole, that's what they're talking about. It has nothing to do with gun shows, because at gun shows, if you're an FFL, you still need to do an check.
Yes.
There's still a record.
It's more like the flea market aspect,
correct,
versus a gun show.
Correct.
Most of the time.
And most people, on our side in the 2A, we said this. We're not giving up anymore. I understand that. And I'm talking about utopian, but I think there needs to be some measures on being able to track that. Now, I will say this on the opposite side. Beto, down in Texas.
Yeah.
We're coming for him. So now, right, the heavy 2A people that are like, see, this is why we don't want to do that. And that's what I'm saying. There's like an abyss.
Yeah.
Like there's not a meaning. I'm not educated and intelligent enough to know what that solution is. I can tell you.
Neither are politicians.
Correct. I could tell you some of the things that contribute to gun crime. And it's not always what some politicians will say. Like, people just want to eat. No, I don't necessarily agree with that. I'll give you one of the things that I look at: social media, right? So if we look at gun crime and the age of our offenders and victims, it's getting lower and lower.
Yep.
We're in a social media society. If me and you had an argument, early 2000s, 90s, I had to like get on my bike right over to your neighborhood, right? Like challenge you and your friends to a fight with 3 of my friends.
Yeah.
We're like in a park, we're banging it out.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe some people in school would find out like 2 days later.
Yep.
Right. Now
Everything's
I could
video.
post, well, not even that. I could post something and 20,000 people will start to feed that.
Correct.
Right. So now my ego is fueled by this like cyberbullying, because that's what it becomes, right? In a sense, that's a huge contributing factor, right? This thing right here, the cell phone that I'm holding up, contributes to crime. And in the way that we raised a generation, that essentially everything is instant.
Correct.
Yeah.
And now we're telling them like, hey, hold on. Think about that.
Right.
Dude, listen, they just video FaceTime their friends. They ordered a pizza, watched a movie, ordered clothes. It's all going to come tomorrow. And then we're like, but be patient.
Yeah.
So that contributes to it, right? Socioeconomic issues, no doubt about it, contribute. I know this because I grew up poor in a poor neighborhood. I understand how it contributes to crime, right? Poor impulse control. Now we're telling people like, hey, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
There's choices still made.
There's choices made.
Yeah. And yes, I do agree.
But
my question is, at what point do can you hold people at what age accountable for certain choices?
18. That's what the law says.
I understand that.
The law's younger on certain things. It's 16
correct.
or
Also
14
correct.
now.
Also, but my point is this: that is not a solution for government. The crime is not a solution for government or law enforcement. It's a solution for the community.
Correct. I agree with that one.
It's a solution for us. as a community, right? As a society. Think about like if you grew up in the 90s, what you were allowed to see on TV, on regular TV, not cable TV, compared to now. It's outrageous.
Or just the ads, the
Oh, yeah.
advertisements.
I watched like Beverly Hills Cop. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Now they're just saying that on regular TV.
Yeah.
Right? Like how many views do you get on a video where somebody's getting like stomped to death in a fight? And people are like we are a problem.
Yeah.
We are part of that problem.
Well, I say all the time when it comes to guns, gun control and all this, they keep talking about it. And I have said it in my testimony for probably the last 4 years. We need to look at the who's, not the what's, and the why's.
But it's a group problem also.
But it's societal.
Correct.
Our society is now a very different society. But instead, we always look at the what, not why
of course.
Things are happening and who they're happening to.
Because we as America don't want to talk about why.
But
we don't.
But talking about the what isn't solving anything.
Correct. But it's a political movement.
I know.
Like it is. Like in the end, it is a socioeconomic issue. Mm-hmm. It's not a race issue. Right? And I'll be honest with you, it's not a race issue because poor people all over America, no matter what the race is, are at higher risk of being gun crime victims, right? And suspects.
Correct.
Doesn't matter where you are. Like I don't care whether you're Asian, white, right? It doesn't make a difference. Mm-mm. So it's a societal issue, but we just, I don't, honestly, Josh, I don't know what the answer is. Okay. I do think that repeat gun offenders do need to serve time. I will tell people if they don't believe me, go on the judicial website, put in somebody that you Googled in your town, in your city, in your state, and look at their conviction and look at how much time they served. That may be an issue. I also think that rehabilitation and outreach programs for youth in the inner city or anywhere are not present. That's a money issue. Mm-hmm. Okay, we just don't do a good job. We're doing better at that, but we just don't.
Mental health, we're not doing well at.
100%. Idle hands do the work of the devil. As they used to say, I do believe in that. We need to give people alternatives. Mm-hmm. You can't incarcerate your way out of this. Mm-hmm. Incarceration is not the key.
Well, no, because it usually just makes them worse.
Correct. It has the potential to. Yep. Yeah, because now you're taking away opportunities that people have in the future and whatever. So you're not going to incarcerate your way out of this. You're also not going to law your way out of this by passing more laws. It's a completely different approach. Yeah. And I don't know what it is. And when people point I remember people going like, well, look at Norway. Listen, there's less people than in the city of New York. Okay, and not as of a diverse as a collection of people. Like apples to apples. Let's do a comparison.
Our country is on its
unique.
In and of its own. Yeah. And we can compare this one, England, Australia. You can look at Israel. You can look at all these different countries, but they were founded differently. They've been built differently. Yeah. They have different values or had different values. Yep. Do things change and do cycles change and ideology change? Yes. But we also have a common founding background that a lot of these other countries didn't have.
Sure. Or it was a little bit different. Most of those, are monarchies and Correct. It's a little bit of a different system. I get that. Listen, what's happening right now, our founding fathers warned us about.
Yeah.
Right. It was spelled out, right, in the founding papers. It is what it is. Why is it wrong for me to say, and this happens to me all the time just because the way I was raised, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, do I look old? I'm like, no, it's just proper etiquette. Like, sir.
Yeah.
Like, that values.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? We've allowed that to dilute itself, and we have now some of the issues that we currently have. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now from being in the job that I am, when you speak to people that commit crimes, they're not like, yeah, that's what I want to do. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I've talked to people that have done significant amount of jail time. I asked them, was it worth it? No. I wouldn't do that again. Right? But it's a cycle. Yeah. I'm lucky. I could have been arrested. All of us probably did something in our life we could have been arrested for and completely derailed our
life
our
would
path.
Have been much different.
Correct. But we didn't. I don't know, man. It's a way deeper question than I think any of us at this table. We could have ideas, but those ideas are also going to be based on our history, our culture, our current experience.
Well, and even if you have ideas, it doesn't mean you have the way to execute the ideas, because an idea is an idea. Execution is a whole different ballgame.
It's a money game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a money game.
All right. So this is now taking the cake of the longest podcast on Lock and Load podcast. So I would love to have Martin on again.
Yes.
Sure.
We can do story time with Martin. That is a famous thing.
Yes.
In the community.
There's a T-shirt.
Is there a T-shirt?
There's a T-shirt.
Okay.
So Mary Ford, just for those people that don't know, she's director for the DC project, or now they actually changed their name.
Yeah.
Women for Gun Rights.
Yeah, we had Brooke
yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Women for Gun Rights. She in a relationship, and she actually created from Delta Arsenal. And that used to be a thing, story time with Martin. And Doug would come in and flip out. He's like, I don't pay you guys to stand around and listen to him. and he was right. He was right. And she created a story time with Martin T-shirt, and that was a thing.
That's cool. Yeah. That's cool.
Do you still have that T-shirt for sale?
Yeah, we still do. I think she still has it.
So, where can we find your T-shirts? Because you have those.
So on Instagram is the easiest way. You could DM me. I put them on there sometimes. Paravant Group, PARAVANT Group. You see me on there. I'm a good-looking guy. Just check the video.
So it's not working undercover.
No. So yeah, that's the training. Kind of still a training company. That I still do sometimes when I have the time. But that's probably the easiest way to reach me. You could DM me on there. I do put shirts on there. I do currently have a line, not just Storytime with Martin.
Yeah.
I do a lot of 2A stuff, also or gun-related stuff, and I also do stuff that's not. But that's the easiest way to reach me.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
So thanks for tuning in, guys. My name's Josh.
And I'm Michelle.
And we'll see you guys next time.